Hello everyone and welcome to my retirement planning website. If you got here from my site, then you know the web address. If not, I will link to it below this video. The website serves two main purposes. First, it answers the question, what is the probability or likelihood that you will run out of money in retirement? It uses historical data and their statistics to do sophisticated analysis of your financial situation and investment strategies. You don't need to understand the underlying statistics to use the site. Second, if you're not going to run out of money, it helps answer the question of how you can maximize your legacy. That is, how much money you leave to those who survive you. Let's start with examining the navigation toolbar across the top of the web page. Home will bring you back to the website's main page. If you have saved scenarios, they are displayed on the home page. New scenario allows you to create a scenario from scratch. I will demonstrate this shortly. Asset mixes are portfolios of asset classes. Asset classes are things like stocks, bonds, REITs. The system currently has 38 asset classes that you can choose from, and more are being added all the time. If we take a look at the asset mixes, what you see are 10 of the 20 well-known and famous portfolio mixes. For example, David Swensen was the architect of Yale's endowment investment. You can look at that particular asset mix and see the asset classes that he invested in and the percentages or weight of each asset class in the portfolio. Moving on, naturally you can manage your account settings, leave feedback, and log out of the website. On the right side of the navigation toolbar, you will see an About link, some legalese, and our privacy policy. We take privacy very seriously. Also note that we do not collect any sensitive information other than your email address, and we will not share that with anyone. Now that you have an overview of the website, let's jump right into the meat of creating and simulating a scenario. I'm going to assume that you have registered and logged in as I have. So we'll go back to the home page here. We are going to start off by creating what we call a scenario. And I will click the New Scenario button. And we'll do this for a hypothetical user named Mary. The scenario gets a title. And in this case, we will call it Mary's Scenario. For the purpose of simplicity, I'm going to assume that this scenario is for a single person. However, if Mary had a spouse, all she would need to do would be to check the married button, and the spouse column is enabled. But in order to move through quickly here, I'll just demonstrate this for a single person. As you can see, every field has been populated with default data, and we're going to use that default data for this demonstration. So we will assume Mary has a birthday of 3/28/71, making her 50 years old, a current income of $80,000, and we'll further assume that she saves 6% of that income towards her retirement nest egg. The next section deals with Social Security. There are many factors involved with your Social Security benefits. I recommend you visit the federal government Social Security website and register yourself there to learn about the factors and also to get a personalized, specific estimate of your retirement benefits. We'll assume that Mary has done that and has decided on taking Social Security at age 70, so that would be 4/1/2041, and that she will get $40,000 a year in benefits. The Retirements Information section deals with outside income and retirement. The first field is the age Mary plans to retire from her full-time job, in this case 65. from ages 65 to 70, she plans to get another job where she makes $30,000 a year. The last field in this section is the age at which she will fully retire. Full retirement means that she won't have any outside income. If you're lucky enough to have longevity in your family, as Mary has, you set the full life expectancy to something like 95 or adjust it as you see fit. The last section is called the shared portfolio information. If Mary was entering this information for herself and a spouse, this section is the pooled information, the pooled financial assets that they have. So investable savings would be $500,000. One-time financial events are things like an inheritance or a planned trip around the world. If you expect an expenditure like a trip around the world, enter a negative number. Also enter the age at which you estimate this event will take place. In order to perform the simulation, we also need to know how much you expect to spend in retirement. That value gets entered here. I know that $150,000 seems like a lot, but this value needs to take inflation into account. And since Mary is fully retiring at age 70 and she's currently 50, that's 20 years from now. So $150,000 is probably a realistic value to enter here. Finally, Mary needs to choose an investment, one of the portfolio mixes that we looked at earlier. For our example, let's select the 60-40 stock bond funds. This is a mixture of stocks and bonds in a ratio of 60% and 40%. Okay, so we can save that, and now back on the home page, we get a message that the scenario has been created, and we have Mary's scenario, which can be run. So if I click this, I can see I have the following options for this scenario. I can update it, in which case I would go back into that same form and change any values that I want. I can run a simulation. I can do something called run all, which we'll discuss in a little bit. And of course, I can delete the scenario. So let's go ahead and run this scenario. What the system is doing is running, in this case, 1,000 experiments. And when it's done, it's going to summarize the results. Okay. So we can see that the name of the scenario is reflected on this page, as is the investment, which is stocks and bonds in a 60-40 weighting. And we ran 1,000 Monte Carlo experiments. The first graph shows you how frequently the final portfolio value is going to have these various amounts. So these are how many experiments, the vertical axis is how many experiments were run, and the horizontal axis is the final value of the portfolio after 44 years. This says year 44. So you can see that the most common outcome is 0. That's the mode. But you also see that there are some outcomes where the final values are quite large. This gives you an overall picture of the distribution of the final outcomes. The three critical measures here are the mode, which is the most common outcome, 0. The median, which is the amount where 50% of the results are below that value and 50% of the results are above it. The median value here is 763,000. And finally, the average which is just the numerical average of all of these, which is 8.6 million. But keep in mind that the average gets skewed by some of these very high but rare um, outcomes. The next graph shows the probability of Mary outliving her money by year. All the way through year 20 or so, she has a 100% chance of outliving her money. However, at year 21, 22, she starts having a very small possibility of running out of money. And as time progresses, she winds up with a 52% chance of outliving her money, basically close to a 50-50, and a 48 or 49% chance of not running out of money. So, these variations come in due to uh, differences in how the portfolio will perform, how inflation will go, etc. The next view of the simulation gives you more details on what is likely to happen to Mary's nest egg over time. So these are confidence bands, and you can see that 5% of the time she will run out of money by the 24th year of this simulation. 10% of the time she'll run out of money by maybe the 27th year, 25% of the time after the 32nd year. The median value, 50%, shows that she will not run out of money. By 25% of the time she'll have $11 million, 10% of the time she'll have 26.5 million, and in rare instances, 5% of the time she'll wind up with $38 million. So this shows you how this portfolio might progress, with different probabilities. Just the way we plot those confidence bands for the final portfolio value, we can also look at her spending in retirement. So if you remember, we said she would spend $150,000. This particular set of confidence bands are driven primarily by inflation. So if inflation stays very low, you'll see her annual spend be in the 335,000 to 440,000. But if inflation is high, it could go as high as $595,000 per year. And similarly, we have what happens to Social Security. So Social Security has something called a COLA, a cost of living adjustment. We have modeled those historically and looked at the statistical behavior of that. And we see this kind of spread for COLA for Mary based on the cost of living, the historical cost of living adjustments of Social Security. Okay, so that gives you hopefully a very, very good insight into what Mary is facing with her current scenario. Now, if Mary is not comfortable with a 50-50 chance of running out of money, which is what she currently has, she might come back in and do some things like change her savings rate to 12% for the last portion of her professional life. She really can't do much about her Social Security amount, but she could decide to work to age 72. And she could cut her spending in retirement from $150,000 a year to $120,000 a year. And this, if she went ahead and ran this simulation, we would now get a different set of results. Presumably, since I made decisions that would all improve her financial health, we should see that reflected in the final results of this particular simulation. And indeed we do. We see that the number of outcomes that are zero has dropped by almost half, and we see many more um, outcomes that are in the positive end over here. The probability of outliving her money now is 83% after 44 years as opposed to just about 50%. And you can see that it's only in very rare instances, 10% of the time or so, will she run out of money. But she's really likely to, uh, have a much better outcome. And her spending, of course, now starts at $120,000 per year and goes up from that. And her Social Security remains the same. So that shows you how you can quickly work out different scenarios and see the impact on the final values. The final thing that I would like to show you is um, the run all feature. So when we do run all, if you recall, I showed you there were 20 asset mixes and 38 asset classes in the system. Run all takes this scenario, Mary's scenario, and it runs it with every asset class and every asset mix that we have in the system. And in this case, that's going to be 58 separate uh, uh, experimental outcomes. So if I do run all, you'll see that it starts to run. You'll also note that this is progressing very, very slowly. There is a tremendous amount of computational work that has to take place in order to do this. So you need to leave yourself plenty of time if you choose to do this kind of run all. What I have done is run that prior to doing this demonstration so I can show you the results of the run all. And in fact, this table has 58 entries in it. At the moment, we're showing 10 entries per page. So I can page through these and see the results. You can go to any page that you'd like. You can change the number of entries per page. So if I wanted to see all 58 on one table, I could just select 100 entries. And there's some very nice searching capabilities. It's very snappy. So if I want to see the conservative asset mix, I can click on that. If I want to see growth, I can see an asset mix called growth and 3 asset classes: U.S. large cap growth, mid cap growth, small cap growth. And so these are the titles. Let me delete that and go back to 10 per page. I think the most powerful feature that we have here is the ability to sort this table on any of the columns. So if you wanted to organize things by asset class and asset mix, you can see how all the asset classes and asset mix perform. If you want the probability, P0 is the probability of the final nest egg being zero, or non-zero actually. So what you're looking for here is a high number. This happens, so when I sort on probability P0, I see that the best one that we have is 89.5%. So this small U.S. small cap value asset class delivers on almost 90% likelihood that she won't run out of money, and a 50th percentile of her final nest egg being $94 million. So that's a very, very healthy result. So this allows you to compare and contrast a large number of investments over time and get a chance to see how they compare with one another statistically. So I hope this has been an enlightening demonstration of the website and I look forward to having you use it and to hearing from you on suggested improvements. The way that I intend to continue to develop this is to take input from people like yourself who are interested in what has been done, but would also like to see new features and functions added. In order to contact me, if you go to the About link, you can send me an email, and I will be glad to get that and respond and think carefully about implementing any suggestions you might have. Thank you very much.